humanity has been given a lot of wake-up calls that, this isn't something that brings me joy anymore, and yet we keep doing it because the pain isn't strong enough to kick us out of, that reality. So I think the planet has set themselves up for a hard ride because people have ignored their wake-up calls. And now the wake-up calls are much more stronger. People are losing jobs and money and so many people identify with how much money they have in the bank. We live in such a weird world where, the first thing we ask people are, what do you do? What we do is such a small aspect of who we are. We live in such a dysfunctional world on so many different levels, but, that dysfunctionality cannot exist in the higher dimensions, so everything comes up for the planet to be healed, cleared, and released. And it's not going to be an easy process for most people because people have ignored it when it was an easy thing to do, and now it's a hard thing.
It almost seems as if it will take, like you said, I watch the financials myself just out of curiosity, and I read a daily column by George Uri called Urban Survival, which is very entertaining, and it's supposed to be a financial column, but it really is a snapshot of the world each day, and pretty enlightened. And so what I see is that a very small percentage of people have set themselves up to tilt the game board in their favor and own everything. I mean, I think 93% of the world's population owns 97% of everything or something like that. It's pretty off balance. And it seems as if for us to get back on balance into heart-centered businesses and interrelationships, that the old paradigms are going to have to crumble somehow in order for the new to be born.
And isn't that what we've been going through in the last year, and it just keeps accelerating, Lance?
Yeah. And I think this year...
The other big thing I think here is one of the biggest reasons when I work with people, like when clients come to me for the first time, is we live in such a world that people have lost sight of who they really are. They're not living authentically to who they are. I mean, we live in a society where, one of the first things we learn is yes, no. We learn in a society that if we want nice things when we're little, we have to please our parents. And then we end up pleasing teachers and pleasing ministers and pleasing doctors and give away our power. I mean, a lot of people are so out of touch with who they really are that it takes a crisis to get them to understand, oh, you're in a lot of pain. And it's sort of like, it's sort of like the drama that gays go through. A lot of gays leave the closet because the pain of being in the closet is so much intense than being out of the closet. And I think that's how people react to life is when the pain gets really intense, then they change. But we pride ourselves on being able to handle stress well and pain well, and that's so dysfunctional because pain and stress are indications that your life is out of balance. And
Absolutely.
You need to bring back balance into your life.
Absolutely true. And I'm glad you mentioned I'm not glad, but you did mention, being gay as an example of something that caused a great deal of pain. And both my parents were at least bisexual. My mother was probably more tended towards being a lesbian. And I fought it for myself, being gay, I got married and thought that I could just shut it off like a faucet. And the pain became so great that I had to get divorced and acknowledge that, that I was not, that was not my direction. And then it took something like 15 to 20 years of hating myself and fighting with it and sneaking around and feeling guilty to gradually shed the one layer after another of, society's and everybody else's judgment.
And, I see the world as being in emotional pain because they're not living authentically to themselves. And some people have to experience a lot of pain before it inspires them to change stuff. And, we're talking about 2012, like the planet, definitely we live in a very accelerated, a lot of stuff has to happen to get caught up. So it's just very interesting. It's very stressful for a lot of people. and it's just very interesting to watch. I mean,
do you find that your clients that their problems are shifting as the months pass? In other words, maybe a client that you might have had a year or two ago is experiencing something entirely different and much more dramatic at this time?
Well, I will say I'm very blessed, Lance. I have some of the best clients in the world. I mean, I attract people who are highly evolved. I attract a lot of what you would call starseeds and light workers and healers and teachers. I thought when I began out healing years ago, I'd be healing for the masses, and I've never attracted masses to my work. I tend to attract very highly evolved people, and to some extent, the clients I have are mirrors of myself. I have to work really hard to stay ahead of my clients. And I think this is true of all the healers and clients and all the people that we work with, that they're in our lives because we're going through a lot of the same stuff. So one of the biggest interesting things my clients have is they almost are a huge empath, and they take on a lot of the stuff from other people and now a lot of the stuff from the planet. And one of the least joyful aspects of being on the spiritual path is when I began out on the spiritual path, I was so oblivious to so much stuff. Now I'm so sensitive to so much stuff, and each year the planet releases, like in the last 3 months of the year, it releases a lot of dense energy, and I almost always get really sick. Just describe, and I don't want that to happen in the future, and I'm not putting any creation energy around that. But and I find that each year I become more and more of what I call a planetary empath, and I think it's part of the process of growing spiritually on this time. But I say that that's one of the biggest challenges most of my clients have is the sensitivity and how to handle the sensitivity to all the stuff that's going on in a planet that's evolving very rapidly. Most of my clients have done a lot of inner work. And almost all my clients have huge world contract services to help humanity with the shift. And it's just, the biggest challenge I'd say I have and they have is how to help to transmute that energy without taking it on. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. In fact, you just described my problems. I was empathic as a child, and then many years I was oblivious to just about everything. Many years spent with addictions to this various substances. But now the problem is that I feel and sense everything on a planetary level, and it's becoming extremely painful on a daily basis. And so I don't have any...
that's one of the reasons why I tuned you for the Universal Clearing Profile, to give you a tool to help clear out some of that stuff that you're taking on. And, the radio show you're doing, you activated World Service contracts to help introduce people on the planet to very interesting people like myself and your other guest visitors, who may or may not have a lot of public visibility. True.
And I have been like you with your clients. As you said, it seems like I've been gifted with some of the most beautiful souls on the planet. And, honest to Pete, I have been gifted with talking to just the most beautiful people in the world, I think. And I'm hoping that, the show reflects that and that people get a little bit of that, because this world has become so difficult to deal with. A quick question for you. Now, I have the healing tool that you gave me. What would you suggest for others who are starseed or light workers or empaths? We probably all have our own little tools and techniques, but what is a common shielding technique that you might suggest for people that's a general shielding technique that helps to keep
I'm really a believer in prayer and intent. I ask the Creator, and I ask for help too. So I would pray and set intent. On a practical level, years ago when I felt a lot of psychic attack energy, it sounds very Wiccan, which I'm not at all Wiccan, but I used to write my name and address on a piece of white paper and put sea salt on it, and that would clear a lot of, weird energies. Very simple type of thing. But in terms of, I have a lot of tools now that I use, things like the Universal Clearing Profile, and that's really why I created that self-help book, too, is to provide tools for people who don't really have access to tools, a way to help people who may not have tools to be able to clear stuff that comes up. But I think for each person, that's a very individualistic thing as to what works or what doesn't work for them. So I'm not sure that there is a real universal sovereign.
Okay. Well, that's a good answer. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, each one of us has to find our own way and our own path. So that's important to remember too, because we don't really want to end up following other people's.
I think another really good thing for people on the planet is to hang out more in nature. I mean, I find it tremendously grounding just to lay down on the grass and look at the sky. Or to look at the beauty of a flower, or I live close to the ocean. I'm very blessed, and in fact, that's why I moved to Florida. Really, is to live close to the ocean. But I find that like if I get down or anything, I just I take a day off and go to the ocean and connect with the energy of the ocean. Some people like mountains. I like ocean. The ocean and sand and sun and all that energy is really good for me. But I really think that hanging out with nature is a really blessed gift for all of us, and it's a real easy way to bring us back into balance. Almost everyone I know has a favorite place that they like to go or a favorite activity they like to do outdoors, and I really find it very grounding myself. So
I agree with you. I was born and raised in Santa Barbara, and of course we had access to the beaches, and it was almost 70 degrees year round. So I became kind of a beach bum most of my life, and I just love being by the ocean. I haven't been there for a while, and I really miss it, being in the mountains. But I'm gifted and blessed there too, because I'm surrounded by mountains, and I don't have street lights and no wires hanging overhead, and at night it actually gets dark and you can see the stars. So yeah, that's very true. You notice the little blessings in even a bee flying by, or a hummingbird at the feet, or
and I also like, when I've been going through really hard times, I really do like the idea of the gratitude journal, where you write down the things in your life that you feel really blessed about, and when you feel in a darker place or heavier, to go through and add some new things. I also think it's really important to connect with beauty. I live in an apartment filled with beautiful things, and I find that beauty is very healing for me. Just looking at beautiful things is very healing. I don't think always that healing needs to be a complex thing, or, for some people it's a very complex thing, but, for me, healing is being receptive. When I work with a client, I don't really try to do anything at all. I just try to hold the space of honoring for that person and to connect with Source and to ask Source for the healing. Healing doesn't really come from the healer. It comes from the person being healed and from the Creator. I think it's so interesting. I've as a person who spent thousands of dollars and hours of going to healing workshops to learn how to do things, I really am sort of anti-healing in a way, in that, I think a lot of times we're really not supposed to do anything at all, but to hold the space and to ask for help and to set the intent for healing.
That makes a great deal of sense. I like that. It makes a lot of sense to me. I find that I tend to be my own best healer, and that doesn't mean that I can always be that. I mean, there are times when it is necessary to tell somebody, look, I need some help, or I could use a technique or a this or a that, and there's nothing to be ashamed about asking for help. And especially during these times when there's so much tension and shifting going on, and so much coming to the surface to be released.
And I do find things like massages. I find massages are very helpful in releasing stuff that gets stuck in the body and stuff. That's just like touch is a very important thing. Like if you don't have a partner or, someone in your life, a lot of people, physical touch is a very important thing and a very healing thing. And if you don't have someone in your life that can provide, maybe you go to a massage person and get massage